Hello! This tutorial video is going to take you through making your first recording in a bedroom setup. If you have never recorded music before, it is worth watching part 1 of this series, which explains the basic setup we are going to use today. To follow along, you're going to need an audio interface and either a microphone and XLR cable, or a guitar or bass guitar. We're also going to need a song to record. If you don't have an original piece of music to record, there's no harm in recording a cover of something you already know. Personally, I think recreating songs you like is a great way to learn the basics. To start off, we need to set the tempo of our metronome. Playing to a metronome will make sure everything is in time, which will be extremely important when adding other instruments, or if you need to chop the track up. If you are recording a cover, you can look the tempo up, or just play to whatever feels right. Enable the metronome and you're set to go. Let's start by recording a guitar part. Plug in and set the gain. Create a new track. Let's name this guitar lead. I find it's best to name your track as soon as you create it, to keep the session organised. Inside your session, all tracks that are armed will start tracking when the record button is pressed. For my first track, I'm playing my guitar through an amp with an output for recording. This gives the guitar a much nicer sound than just plugging straight into the interface. Let's hit record. Now that we have our first recording, here are some useful functions of a DAW to know. First and foremost is the timeline. This shows the tracks of our mix laid out over time with indicators for bars and beats. We can also see our audio waveforms. These splotches on the track indicate how loud the signal was at this moment of time. If we zoom in, we can see that these splotches are in fact waves. Also on the timeline, we have the playhead. This indicates where the audio is going to play from when you hit play. Pressing this button will send the playhead back to the start. On this panel, we also have buttons to record, stop recording, play, and pause. We also have a button to loop audio. On the timeline, highlight a section of the track you would like to hear repeated. Then engage the loop. When the playhead reaches the end of the section, it will go back to the start of the loop. It is important to remember that your loop won't be on the finished track and will only appear inside the DAW. Let's add a new track and get ready to record the next part. Make sure you only have the new track armed so that you don't record over the first one. Now that we've got 2 tracks, we can start thinking about how they're going to sit in the mix. If you look at the track in the mixer, we can see a control to change the panning of our tracks. This sets where we are hearing the track come from. The left, right, or from the middle. I've got 2 guitar tracks, so I'm going to pan one quite far to the left and the other far to the right. In the mixer, we can also see controls to mute or solo each track. We use these to hear only what we want to when mixing. I'm going to go ahead and record a few extra tracks for this piece. This would be a good time to pause and record any other parts that you want to. Now that I've got my tracks, I'm going to pan the new guitars left and right, but leave the bass and the vocals in the centre. Also in the mixer, we have a control for the volume of each track. You can use this to turn down anything that's too loud. It's normally a better idea to turn down tracks to make room for the tracks you want to stand out, as if you turn tracks in the mixer up too high, they'll clip. The next step to mixing our project is to add a few effects. Effects are processing that is added to the track to make it fit the mix or to add extra detail. Processing takes up the bulk of most mixing, and it can take years to build up that skill set. So for this video, we're going to start small. The first effect we're going to add is a bit of reverb. Select Effects and choose Reverb from the menu. Reverb is pretty easy to explain. It's an echo. Adding reverb can give depth to your mix, and it can help the different elements to blend together. By altering how long our reverb tail is, we can go from cave to church to bathroom. I'm going to go for a pretty deep reverb on my guitars, and a bit of a shallow one on my vocals. The other effect we're going to add is an equalizer, which is normally called an EQ. EQ shows you the real-time volume of the frequencies you hear on a track. Low-end frequencies are boomy and heavy. Instruments like bass guitar and kick drum have a lot of low frequencies in their sound. High-end frequencies are bright and thin. High-end frequencies usually carry the detailed sounds of an instrument. Mid-frequencies add punch and body to the sound. They fill out the sound of most instruments, and as a result, most instruments in the mix will be occupying the mid-range. We can also use EQ to enhance the frequencies that already sound good or that are lacking. The best way I feel to learn how to EQ is to start with a rough shape and use your ears to hear what changes need to be made. Don't forget to compare the before and after to make sure you like the changes you've made. With an EQ, we can set a low or a high pass. This is a cutoff point from which you won't hear any frequencies beyond. This is useful if you want to cut a lot of low or high end. We add an EQ the same way we added our reverb. In this menu, we can also choose which order the effects happen. For this example, I'm going to put my EQ first. However, you could add a second EQ to change the sound of the reverb. One last thing we're going to add to our mix is a bus. A bus is a track that you apply effects to, but that receives its audio from other tracks in the mix. This lets you apply the same effect to a bunch of tracks at once, which will save time and processing power. Add a new track and name it Bus. Press this button to open the menu. You can select the track and choose to send it to the bus, or you can select the bus and choose to receive your track. Then, simply add effects to the bus as you would any other track. I'm going to create a bus with some reverb and EQ to send my guitars to, as well as another bus for my vocals. At this stage, I think the best way to get these basics down is to experiment. Sometimes the easiest way to understand how an effects work is to break its rules. Try putting reverb on the bass. Try making really muffled guitars using EQ. Or clip the signal in the interface to get an interesting sound. Sometimes, experiments like this can lead to really cool songs. I hope that by following along with this video, you've got the beginning of a mix and the know-how to start experimenting and working on making simple recordings. In the next video, we're going to look at more effects and how they work, as well as how we can expand our songs and our mix. Thanks for watching.